Okay, my name is Ron Buck. I'm the District 3 VP for the Volunteer Firefighter Association. And as I said, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker today. I first met Jason when he was working for the Fire Service Training School out of Great Falls. He was our area trainer, and he came up to Shelby to do rescue tools, extrication, all kinds of different types of training, communications especially. He had to move on, and he went down to Wyoming to become the Laramie County District 2 Chief. Correct. Yes, I want to get that right. So please give a warm Montana welcome back to Mr. Jason Caughey.
All right, can you hear me okay? Perfect. I figured from you, Craig. Thank you for the warm welcome, and it is good to be back in Montana. And I hope that for the next 55 minutes or so we can have an open conversation about what the impact of family is in the fire service and how to improve recruiting and retaining volunteers in the fire service. And, you know, like Mr. Buck said, I came from Gore Hill, which was a small fire department just outside of Great Falls, where we got to be mentored under Leonard Levy, and I get to work in the Golden Triangle and Craig Hansen and all the folks that helped influence where we're at today. But 11 years ago, I got to had the opportunity to become the fire chief of Laramie County Fire District number 2. And at the time, they were solely a volunteer organization. I was the second full-time chief, but there was a gap, 10-year gap between full-time chiefs. And the organization was growing and changing and evolving. It was a very good organization, but there was this huge gap in where they needed to get to continue to provide service for their community. We had about 29 active members, 25 active members at the time, and the organization was struggling with the needed improvements for service for the community, because at the time they were doing about 400 calls a year, and at the end of 2011 we were pushing 650 calls, and at the end of 2012 we were over 1,000 calls. So the call volume was going up, but our response was going down. And we didn't have the dollars, and we still don't have the dollars for career staff. So we had to figure out how to recruit, and then more importantly, how to retain members in our organization. And maybe. If you look at the map here, there's a little map of our county. Laramie County has 9 county fire districts in it, and District 2 is kind of about a third of the county at the time, and we'll talk a little bit about a consolidation that's occurring now. But at the time, we were covering a very big part of the county with only 20-some volunteers, and that just wasn't going to work. We were having to travel 45 minutes to get to a call. As the first full-time chief, I was arriving on scene and having to do CPR for the first week I was there. I did 9 CPR in progress calls. And I remember being on scene for 15 minutes alone with a sheriff's deputy, trying to teach CPR to him or trying to have him help me. And with a relationship that I didn't know, because I didn't know the deputies yet. And I said, this has got to change. And we got to figure out how to facilitate improving our volunteer performance. So we started to look at the model that we were using. And I want to put it in comparison that in 2011, we had about 25 folks. We were running about 450 calls a year. Today, we're over 1,100 calls, 1,200 calls a year, 4 stations, and we have 102 members before the consolidation. And those 102 members aren't paid. That's volunteer growth and retention. And there's 2 pieces of that I'm pretty proud of. The first one is, of those 25 that were here when I started in 2011, 21 of them are still with the organization. And that speaks volumes to those individuals because they got to weather the storm and the challenges that they saw. When I interviewed for that position, I asked the board, I said, how many folks do you plan on losing regardless of who you hire as fire chief? Because from my experience at Gore Hill and other places, 10% of it leaves because they weren't happy with the choice, they wanted the job, et cetera, et cetera. We saw that. But because we anticipated that and we communicated it on the front end, when that happened, when we lost those 5, 6, 7 people, there was no surprise, there was no shock, there was no panic. And so we wanted to make sure that we were open with our communication. The next thing is the previous administration, the previous group, really focused on discipline. Very militaristic based, which is good to a point. And they wanted to penalize you for everything. And we wanted to change the focus to focus on family and culture, and the rest would fall into place. So, what changed? Core focus. We started to focus on culture instead of discipline. And I just had a conversation with one of our officers last week because we're not perfect. I will tell you that we have all the same challenges and problems as everybody else in this room, probably more in some cases. And we fail just as much as we succeed. I was telling Chief Hansen and Chief Bill Perrin that we throw a lot of ideas against the wall, and maybe only 1% of those actually work and benefit the organization, and we fail at the 99 other percent of them. But we continue to try, and that's part of the message of building a family. By changing from family focus versus the discipline piece of it, we were able to change the culture, where we started to create some values. And we started to create values in family, and we focused on 4 things. And this was 4 things that core group decided were important for them. And what we did is we sat in a room with that core group, and we put on the whiteboard everything it meant to be a Fire District 2 member. Not by position, not by certification, but what did it mean to be a member? What did it truly mean? And they listed all sorts of wonderful words. Integrity and honor and service and all these things, right? And they were all great. And we kept whittling it down to 4 things. If you were to teach a new person about Fire District 2, what would it be? And they came up with 4 things: service, ownership, unity, and progressive. And we started to put some action words or action or defining words to each one of those. Who are we servicing? And the common answer is we service the customer, correct? Well, we wanted to switch that from not only servicing the customer, which is an external service, to an internal service. And by servicing the internal service, that started to build the family piece of this. That started to say, if we take care of our internal folks, our members, and remember, we don't have any money. Wyoming state law mandates that we can't collect more than 3 mills annually. And 3 mills is, if you know, is 3 cents on every $1,000 of valuation of homes, which isn't very much. That was set in 1947, and it hasn't been adjusted, and it won't be adjusted. So we don't have any money. So how do we focus on taking care of our internal customer, which is our internal members, and providing value for them to be a part of our family? So that was the first big piece of family for us, was service. The next big piece was ownership. Remember I told you that they were very discipline-based, and it was very much controlled by the core group of officers. I'll tell you that they were very good people. The previous chief, her husband, and their son-in-law and their daughter were all officers in the organization, which was all good, except for if anybody else tried to do anything, what happened to them? Yep, they weren't allowed to. You couldn't touch the engine unless one of them were there. You couldn't do this unless one of them were there. God forbid you made a change of something unless one of them approved it. You had to get a requisition form in triplicate, I think, to even change out the toilet paper roll in the bathroom, or get a piece of toilet paper because it was locked up. So there was this us versus them between the volunteers, and that's why the volunteers, in my opinion, were rotating through that door as fast as they came in, they were leaving, because they couldn't do anything. And so we changed the service piece of family. Then we focused on ownership, and we started to give them ownership. They're responsible. Everybody, I want to believe, everybody wants to do well. And we provide them the opportunity to do well. We give them some ditch banks, some guidelines on what our expectations are, but we want them to own their actions and be responsible for it and to work through it. So we talk about ownership as a big piece of this whole thing. Then we wanted to create unity, and we started with unity with silly things. We put a fireplace upstairs. I know Craig Hansen probably has a marble-plated one now in Chinook, but we started with dumb things that provided the opportunity for our members to come hang out with each other and to participate with each other. And then we wanted to be progressive. We wanted to continue to look at what we're doing and does it make sense. and knowing and setting the stage that we're going to continue to evolve and change as the value needs to change for our members. So in 2011, the value was, hey, just provide a safe place for us and we'll enjoy it. By 2015, we had to provide more value, and so we increased incentives and we developed plans and we started to do some other things. Some of those other things that we started was, we started to change the focus from pager response from home to staffing stations, and that was a big transition for us. The reason why we had to make that transition is because we introduced resident students into the building, living in the college program like Frenchtown and Missoula Rural and other places in the state of Montana do. But when we did that, that hurt our volunteers because they wouldn't make the first truck to the first call. And so then you had this challenge of, well, how do we make them feel a part of that call? And so what we did is we said, we want you to come hang out at the station. You get to pick the time, you get to pick the duration, and when you do, we're going to provide opportunities for you for training. We're going to give you a meal. We do a lot of cooking of food, and we provided a place, an atmosphere that was much like a family atmosphere. And when you think of family and you think of your family, your personal family, your upbringing, I'll tell you I'm 51 years old and I understand the family dynamics changed. I do not have kids. Craig Hansen, again, could probably share with me stories of raising kids. Right, 4 of them. But when I look back at my family, we had dinner every night. My mom turned the TV off in the kitchen, and we sat down and we shared stories. We laughed, we cried, we got scolded, we got disciplined. My dad was a high school math teacher and a sheriff's deputy in the summer. I got a lot of discipline, probably needed more. But you look at that family dynamic, and you look at today's society, we're high-paced, we're on our phones, we're not engaged as a family. By creating that family feel in the fire department, we were providing a value to folks that they didn't even realize that they were missing in their life. They started to bond with each other, they started to share, they started to build relationships. And by creating that family sense of kind of the old model of the family, our home family, they found something that they didn't even know that they needed. And that was, it was a place to come on Friday night to watch a movie with the kids because there was movie night at the station. Or it was the Saturday family dinner where we have 100 folks having dinner in the engine base, sharing and laughing, and the little kids growing up, and we get to see their kids grow up because we've created this family feel inside of the fire department. So family became our focus. And when we look at family, I just kind of broke it down into an acronym, and because the fire service loves acronyms, we just focused on it. We made it a priority. As much as we made training a priority, we made developing the culture of family a priority. We started with some incentive programs. We wrote a SAFER grant, and we got some cash to do a paper point where they get a dollar nominal value. I will tell you that out of 102 people right now, we're only paying about 18 people that stipend because they found a different value than that little bit of money that they could get. We started an incentive program for college tuition reimbursement. It didn't matter if it was fire science or accounting or a master's degree in psychology. If you went to school, made your shifts, we were going to pay for your tuition as long as you got a B or higher, or a C or higher, I guess. We started some incentives. We used SAFER grants to help us with that. Then you looked at attentive. We need to attend to the volunteers. So we had to listen. We had to listen to what their needs were, what they wanted out of this from us. And then we looked at maintaining it. It takes maintenance. Just like anything else in the fire service, we have to maintain those relationships and we have to grow them. And then individuals, we needed to treat them as individuals, but include them as part of the team. One of the statements that I make to our officers quite a bit today is that, look at Bill Perrin. Bill Perrin's been a pillar of the Montana Fire Service for I don't even know how many years, a few. But he was also a highly decorated professional in the banking finance industry. He was a professional every day, and then he came to the volunteer organization, and had he not been a part of a good organization, he probably wouldn't have lasted because we have a tendency in the fire service, both career and volunteer, to treat people not with respect and trust and value. But he found an organization that he could be valued and that he could provide a value back because of his knowledge and professionalism. Craig Hansen and Leonard Lumpy and others that work a professional job, own their professional business, they found value in that. So we wanted to focus on making sure that we treated them as individuals, we respected the knowledge that they brought to us, and we didn't stymie who they were to fit a mold. This summer I was in a department in this state, which was really nice, and I'm honored to have come and talked to them. And we had about 20 folks in the room. And in the back of the room were the senior folks, right? Been on the department 20-some years, really great guys. In fact, most of them said, yeah, you did our Firefighter 1 back in 2000. I'm like, that's pretty cool. How'd we do for you? And they're like, it was really fun. And they're talking about, I said, what was it like when you joined in 2000? And they said, it was horrible. They said, the old guard wouldn't let us do anything. They wouldn't let us touch anything. They wouldn't let us. And I said, perfect. And up front was one young man in his early 20s. And I said, how do you feel today? And he was exactly what they just said. I feel that I can't do anything, I can't touch anything, I can't without them telling me it's okay. And the guys in the back of the room, you could see the light bulb come up. And they thought, holy smokes, we're doing what was done to us and we don't even know it. And I see that across our state, and I see it across our county. I see the old guard, and I saw it when I taught for FSTS. We would go teach command like we did in Shelby, and you'd sit in take the fire chief and you put him in the command vehicle with you, and somebody would be struggling to start the pump or engage the engine or do something, and what was the first thing the fire chief wanted to do? Get out and fix it, right? And what's the worst thing they could do? How many times did you have to lock the door? Leonard was with us. How many times did we lock the door and say, no, chief, it's okay, sit here? Because what happens is, because we've been around the fire service so long, we forget that those individuals have talent and they have skills. They need the opportunity to fail, but they also need the opportunity to succeed. If we do it all for them because we're the senior person, we've been around the longest, that does not foster growth for them in the future. They get deterred in their energy and they stop showing up. So we wanted to focus on making sure that we treated them as individuals, but they're a part of our team. And then we needed to feel loved. And I know this is 2021. I grew up in the 70s. Love was a hard love, and love still can be a hard love, right? But it also can be a softer love. We do have to love, and there's a difference between love versus like. We do have to love our folks, and we have to care about them. And when, as leaders, as senior members or company officers or chiefs or board of directors, when we show that we care and we love them, they reciprocate that by showing up more. So we wanted to introduce love, and I know it's a little soft and touchy, but we wanted to make them feel loved. And then we wanted to have them give the identity that it's theirs. It's yours. This is your organization. You're a team member, you're a part of our organization, and it's yours. Yes, we have this long lineage and heritage. One of the first things, Manny Muscas is my operations chief now full-time. He was a volunteer. He started when he was 13 years old as an explorer post. He said, we never got to come and do anything. We wanted to change this compartment on the apparatus, but guess what the chief said every single time we asked? No, don't touch it. First thing he did when he came to me and said, can we change that compartment? I said, sure. You guys are the ones using it, not me. Tell me what you're going to do. We're going to do this and this. Perfect, go for it. We empowered them. And that's what we wanted to do, is say it's yours. We want you thinking about our profession and our organization. We're going to give you the ditch banks to operate in, but we want you to have the opportunity to create and move forward with us. So when we looked at focusing on the organization, we really wanted to look at recruitment first and then retention second. I needed people. So that first year, we started recruiting and we started marketing. We started building little cards, business cards that said, you made an impression. And I was handing them out at the grocery store, I was handing them out at the gas station, I was handing them out wherever somebody made an impact on me, gave me great service as a waitress or a waiter, and I was recruiting them. And I said, you ever thought about the fire service? And they were like, no, come talk to us, come check out our webpage. And on the back was the webpage and our phone number and our address. Come hang out, come see what it's about. And we started to generate energy. We started to get to the high schools, which a lot of you can do very easily. We focused on developing our organizational values and representing it to the public so that we became a value to them. And people started to say, I want to be a part of that organization. We got in trouble with some of the neighbors because some of their people wanted to start to be part of our organization too. So we had to figure out how to deal with that. And then you have to really match what you're doing with your community. And for a lot of us, and I'm finding myself now 11 years in at Fire District 2, I'm finding myself having to reinvent who I am as a leader, because what I did in 2011 is not going to be effective today in all aspects. So I have to continue to reinvent who I was. And most all of us had the opportunity to interact with Chief Brunacini over the years. And you look at Bruno, who had been in the fire service for 40 years, and much of that as a chief officer. That's the one thing that he did continue, is he continued to reinvent to match what he was providing to his department, his community, and his city. So I think that's a big part of focusing on what we need to do. We need to be attentive. We needed to look at all levels of our leadership. I had to have some folks leave our organization, or at least change roles, and that took difficult conversations. We had to have those fatherly talks to get them to see the importance of family for us and get away from this militaristic, yes sir, no sir, my rank, my badge heavy, and more of, these are individuals. We changed. They used to have to address who you were by rank. Blew me away. So we'd have volunteers come in, and they'd have to address the other one as captain or lieutenant or chief or whoever. And I started with me, and I said, you can call me whatever name you want. Sometimes it might be a 4-letter word. You're going to call me, and that's okay if that's what you're feeling. But I want you to treat me as a person. I'm going to treat you as a person first. And from there, we changed it. We changed the culture. They know when to address us as officers. By golly, they're smart. In a public setting, guess what they call me? Chief. But on a personal side, guess what they call me? Jason, how are you doing? That's what we wanted to grow from that. We wanted it from all levels of our organization, because most important, again, is the family. It's the people. We started to convey this with the neighboring fire district this last year, because they still have that in place, that as their volunteers come in, they have to address them by rank, and they have to stand in attention, they have to do all this dance and funny stuff. And I'm like, that's a volunteer. Treat them like a person, because that's who they are. And even on the career side, if we treat them like a person, we're going to get them to grow and participate more. So we looked at attentive, we looked at focusing on their needs, we looked at communicating, both listening and sharing. And the big piece about communicating, when I first started in 2011, I could send an email out and 80% of the organization would read the email. By 2018, I could send an email out and 10% of them would read an email. What happened to the value of that message or that email from me to our members? It was gone. Plus, what happened societally during that time frame? They're on Facebook, they're on Tinder, they're on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, they're on all these 30-second little messages. It's a now industry. My message of them trying to read a half-page email was gone. So 3 years ago, I started doing Chief's Briefs every Monday morning. I do a Chief's Brief, 2 minutes to 5 minutes of video. I sit at my computer, I make a video, I include pictures of a training or an event or a thank you or whatever it might be going on, and I press send every Monday morning. 3 years later, what happens when I miss a Monday morning? I get messages. Hey, did something go wrong with the email? I didn't get the email today, or I didn't get the message today. Or 3 days later, I'll get a message saying, hey, I didn't see the video. What happened to it? Well, because I missed it. So we found a new way to communicate with our members that was more effective. You have to continue to work through and evolve what we're doing. So we needed to attend to them. We need to look at our community needs and our members' needs and balance those things. And then we needed to maintain it. We needed to keep on focusing on how to improve the relationship of family. So 2 years ago, we had a big expansion. We started to push 100 folks. The organization got pretty big for the 4 or 5 of us that were trying to paid staff run it. We said we need to break the pieces up more. And so we started platoons, and we broke up. At that time, we had 3 stations. Those 3 stations essentially were us, them, and we. Us was station 1. We're the big guys. And then them was station 2, and we was station 3, way out there. And we had these 3 distinctly different organizations. In fact, we had training different. We had all these pieces. And so we had to break that up. So we started a platoon system. We broke everybody up into a platoon instead of a station. So there's 15 people in each platoon, 15 to 20 people in each platoon. They have a platoon leader, which is an informal leader, and then they have a platoon lieutenant, which is a formal leader. And we wanted to break the piece up so that they had more connection, more family feel to the organization. That was a big transition because we took them out of their stations. Because I would hear statements like, well, I'm a Station 2 person. Nope, you're a District 2 person. We wanted to change that culture of who they were in our organization. And when we put them in platoons, we made the decision that every year we'd rotate the platoons. We'd break them up and realign them. So that way we didn't ever have this subculture developing in our organization. At the same time, we said we need to bring back some of the family pieces that we're losing because there was some bonding going on at the stations, right? Station 2 had a really good family bond. But that was also a detriment because their family bond was negative to the organization because they didn't let anybody else in it. They didn't let Station 1 in it. So we wanted to bring back some of the family pieces that we were breaking up. So we scheduled them and planned them. Family dinners, we do one family quarterly dinner minimum. Every Saturday training, which is once a month, we do a meal. We do lunch. We do lots of breakfasts for training. We do meals at training at night. But the family dinner was solely about bringing the family together. Our last family dinner was last month, and we had 127 people at it. We had wives, we had kids, we had old members, we had current members, and they got to share stories, they got to laugh. Our next one is Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We're doing Thanksgiving dinner at the stations, and we're anticipating 150 people at it. And the reason is because they feel a part of the family. So it needs to be maintained, and it needs to be continued to grow. If you think about your family as a kid, or if you were fortunate enough, you got to go on a family vacation once in a while. The fire service is a grind. Being a volunteer is a grind. You work full-time hours in your career, and then you're expected to come do stuff for the fire department. Now, sometimes that's fun, but it can be a grind, and over the years it gets to be a grind. So you have to create opportunities for family vacations. And so what we started last year is we started a quarterly incentive program. The first one we did was Topgolf. We had a contest for each platoon. If 80% of the platoon participated, the number of platoon that had the most training hours and the most calls won a Saturday afternoon at Topgolf. Lunch was provided, no alcohol. Lunch was provided, and golf was provided for 2 hours at Topgolf. I don't even know if they swung a club, but I know what they did do. They got to drive 90 minutes to Denver in a car, 2 cars together, and they got to share stories, they got to laugh, they got to have fun, they got to go there, they got to eat a meal together, and by the time they came back, guess what they were all thinking? That they stunk at golf, but they were thinking that this was a pretty cool organization that just paid for us to go play Topgolf. So having the opportunity to do that, creating a family vacation for your folks is important too, an opportunity. And then the individual piece, we really wanted to focus the power back to the individual and be a part of the organization. We tell all of our folks on the first night that you can carve whatever path you want in our organization as long as you participate. As long as you show up, attend, and give a little bit of energy, we're going to allow you to pick your path. If that's EMS, if that's rope rescue, if that's vehicle extrication, if it's command, we're going to provide the opportunities for you to grow in your passion areas in our organization. And when we did that, they started to buy into it. There's another thing that we tell them on the first night. And the first night of our academy is we invite their families with us. So we would invite their spouse, their loved one, their brother, their sister, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, and we sit them all down in the room for dinner, which is about 50 of them. We bring members in and say, have dinner with all of them, introduce yourself, get to know each other. You're joining this family. And the only way you can be successful in our family is if you're successful with your family at home. And so it's a lesson I learned from Shields. There's a brand new Shields right over here at the mall. I've worked for Shields for a number of years. Leonard and them know this. And one of the things that Shields used to do, if you were the store manager of the year for Shields, you got a plaque. It said store manager on it. It's pretty nice, right? It was a nice plaque. You know what your spouse got? A check for $5,000. Because for that store manager to be successful, what did they need at home? Support. They needed a shoulder to cry on when times got tough. They needed someone to laugh when times were good. They needed the motivation to get up and get going again. Then you can't do that. Your volunteers in your organization have the same challenges. They're struggling with something at work. I remember being at Shields in Great Falls, Montana, hating life, going, I'm done. But I remember going to Gore Hill and getting in a truck with Butch Whedon and Leonard Lumbee and going and teaching in Inverness or wherever that we went. And I remember coming, by the time I came home, all my worries in the world were gone about Shields. That's the same impact that your volunteers have if you have a good family environment and care about your folks. So we wanted to make sure we treated the individuals. We wanted to make sure we recognized the family, that it took all of you. So we make that message clear at the beginning of the academy, and then during the academy celebration, we reinforce that message that your academy family is now going to get broken up. You guys are going to go to platoons, and you're going to lose that. But we want to bring everybody back together, including your spouse, loved ones, and kids, so that they can be a part of that family feel. Loved versus like, we talked a little bit about when I introduced it, but it truly is a love-hate relationship. I just had a young man, Caden Morrison, been with us. He was a resident student 8 years ago, got hired at the Wyoming International Guard firemen 7 years ago, stayed with us as a volunteer. This spring he got offered a job with Cheyenne Fire Rescue, transferred there, and because of Cheyenne Fire Rescue's rules, he had to quit being a volunteer. And he wrote a 2-page letter to us in his resignation. And it was about love. It was, Chief, you were always rigid and stern, but you always cared about us. You always showed us the value in this. Manny, you were like a father figure to me, and you always were there when his dad had passed away. You were there to pick up my pieces when my world was falling apart. He found a family in our organization, and that speaks volumes about the power of creating that family feel. And then yours, if you're not getting the impact that you want out of your recruitment, if you're not finding people, you better look at yourself first. And I said this message before during another presentation. If you're not seeing recruitment and you're not getting people coming to your organization, you better look at yourself. Because either you're micromanaging, you're too powerful, you're too controlling, you're not meeting what they're looking for. We flew here, Josh Van Vlack and I flew here, Josh is a smart guy, and we're waiting at Denver Airport to get on a plane. And if you watch the service industry or the airline industry today, you go, they've lost it. There's no service. It's now become a necessity to fly, right? They don't care. What's going to happen to those industries is they're going to suffer at some point when people find another means of travel. But because they have the market cornered, they don't have to care. And there's no service there. We have to find value to give it back to our members to be a part of it, because we don't have the luxury of not caring about them. So, creating a family business, Leonard and Craig and others of you that work your own businesses, you know the value, the heart, the sweat, the tears, the passion that you have for your business. The fire service is a business. There is transactions that occur. We have a transaction with a citizen. They pay for our service by paying their taxes, providing donations to us. We're having a transactional reaction with them. To do that, we have to have good internal and external service, right? So we have to focus on that. We talked about it. And then we have to be able to find out if we're satisfying what they're doing. Are they getting satisfaction? So it's easy for the customer. Most of the time, the citizens, what do they say about the fire service? Boy, the guys did great. The gals did great. It was such a pleasure. We're honored to have you. We're America's heroes. It's harder to know what our internal folks tell us. So our ability to ask the right questions, to hear the right answers, to see what's happened, to read the informal, nonverbal language from your membership. When I first came to Fire District 2, we had Wednesday night training like most of you do, Tuesday night and Wednesday night training. And if you walked into the apparatus bay on Wednesday night training, what did everybody do? They hid along the walls, they talked with their friend, but nobody was engaging. And you can picture it in your own department today, that on those training nights, you'll see that. They cluster in the corners, they cluster in certain areas. The first thing we did was, the moment they walked through that door, we were assigning them. We were assigning them an action, a task, a function, a responsibility, because we wanted to get them engaged. And that's part of that family business. If you owned a business and your employees showed up to cut sod or roll sod on the big tractor, you didn't let them mill around when they came to work, right? Jimmy, go get on the tractor. We got to get going. That was the same attitude we took with training, is that their time was valuable to us, so let's maximize it. We weren't going to let them sit around for 30 minutes and not do anything. We wanted to get them going and get them engaged. So creating that family business, having satisfaction, having ownership. And we focused on those 4 functions again: service, ownership, unity, and family. Recruiting and retention is hard. And for the next 20 minutes, I want to have an open conversation. I want to get off the darn stage, because that's not who I am. And I want to have a conversation because a lot of you, Brad, you're doing stuff in your organization that's worked, you're doing stuff that's failed. So some things that have worked for us, and I'll start the ball rolling. Some things that work for us. And we're not perfect. We have, I'm going to preface this, we have as many problems as the rest of you. But things that have worked. We started an incentive program. We utilized Safer Grant to help us get the funds to incentivize participation. We changed the culture. Last week, Operations Chief Manny Muskitz is a brilliant man. I told you he's been with the organization since he was 13. He's now 37 or 38. Came to me and said, Jason, actually he might address me as a chief because it was not a good conversation. He says, we're 300 reports behind right now. 300 call incident reports that weren't closed out. Started but never finished for the last 30 days. He goes, we need a discipline policy to these guys that aren't doing the reports. What do you think I told him? Is it a discipline issue, Chief? If they didn't do the report at the end of it, is it a discipline problem or is it a cultural problem? Can I discipline them into improving? I can't, can I? Because what are they going to say? Let's hear this. Now, is discipline part of it? Is discipline part of the culture? Absolutely. There's got to be a little bit of that, right? But it was a cultural piece. It was a cultural piece for us to say, it's not their fault that they didn't do the 300 calls. Whose fault is it? Mine. Because guess what I didn't do? As the tip of that spear, guess what I didn't do? I didn't ask Manny, how are reports doing last week or last month? I failed Manny by saying, you're not keeping up on the reports. And then Manny has to own he failed by not checking on it weekly. And then the company officer needed to have ownership of it. We needed to disperse the ownership of this problem. We couldn't discipline them. So we had to change the culture. Manny's solution was, we need a policy, we need a procedure, we need to fine them, we need to not pay them, we need to take away their birthday, we need to do whatever it takes. I said, man, that's not going to work. That'll work today, but that won't work for 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. The message has to be the culture. And the culture is what drives the success of your organization. So we said, change the culture, you'll change the outcome. So I said, here's what we need to do. One, we need to be consistent with checking to verify the reports are done. We got to speak about it. Every Monday when I do that Chief's Brief, guess what I'm talking about? When Manny does his, guess what I'm talking about? Because it's an area that we have to improve. Maybe it's seatbelt wearing, maybe it's slowing down. Maybe it's all those other things that we're continually juggling in the air to keep happening. It comes down to the culture. Recruitment and retention is the same piece of that. Next step that we did, we started that resident program, which is part of it, but that's not the success. That was just a Band-Aid to get us to the next level. We focused on holding people accountable, but in a positive way. We focused on creating opportunities for them to grow within the system, and we focused on them instead of focusing on how good my badge looked or what white shirt I wear. I don't wear a white shirt as a fire chief except for when I go to a formal function. Every day I wear this, a polo or a t-shirt, because the message is I'm just like you. I didn't want this separation. I want to be just like you. I just have a different role and responsibility than you do for most of the day. So we wanted to send a different message. And I learned that from the Levelland fire chief, Levelland, Colorado. Randy Murawski took over an organization that was badge heavy. The previous chief would put on the white long sleeve shirt when he came in to do discipline. So every time somebody showed up in a white shirt to a station, what did the guys think? Exactly. So Randy stopped wearing a white shirt because every time he went to a fire station in a white shirt, what the guys, they're like, oh my God, who's getting it today? And Randy said, I've never even chewed you out. Why are you scared of me? So he started wearing a blue shirt, and guess what happened? The guard let down, they started to communicate. When I stopped wearing a badge shirt every day, guess what happened? Everybody started talking. And then I could hear what their concerns were. So we still put the costume on, like Bruno would call it, right? We still put the costume on to honor our traditions. But daily operations, we've tried to erode that. So, Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's worked in Hamilton for you, and what hasn't worked?
Well, incentive system for the volunteers penalize you if you didn't meet certain expectations instead of incentivizing the system. And we're just changing that up now, and it's being received well. There was this drop dead percentage when if you didn't meet it, you didn't get anything. So we're kind of changing it to more of a tiered system, incentive system.
So incentivizing the positive instead of taking the negative. The other message that I think is important is every volunteer that wants to participate with you is giving of their time, right? And that's the most valuable thing they have. It's time away from their kids, it's time away from their loved one, it's time away from their employer, it's time away from fishing and hunting or their passion outside of the fire service. So respecting their time allowed us to bond with them better. Respecting and appreciating their time. Not penalizing them when they didn't make it. Finding a value. So we have a former teacher, retired teacher, Becky Hale. She's been with us for 16 years now. She's just an EMS person. We don't have just EMS people anymore. And the other day we're changing, we're evolving again. She said, I want to pay for my own uniform because I don't feel like I put enough time in to warrant the citizens paying for our uniform. I said, Becky, absolutely not. I said, let's look at this differently. Let's say, Becky, how can we maximize what you bring to the table? You're a former teacher, you're passionate about EMS, you're passionate about search and rescue. How can we utilize that so that you have more opportunity to grow and participate with our organization? Instead of trying to pigeonhole Becky into a box in our system, we wanted to bring the box to Becky, if that makes sense. We wanted to provide her the opportunity. We have folks that drive semi-truck every day or ranch vehicles every day, but they can't crawl on the floor to get to the seat of a fire and into your fire. We can't pigeonhole them, well, they can't do the firefighting job, so we shouldn't have them. We've created opportunities as driver operators for them to participate. That station that's 27 miles away, they can't do it. Their bodies are to the point in an older ranch community where they can't get down on their hands and knees to do those tasks anymore. That's okay. There's other tasks that we can provide for them to feel part of the program still. And having that flexibility, the mindset that they all bring value, we just got to find the right position for them, has helped us grow with that incentive program for them. Rich Calgar, what's not working at Columbus that you want to address or change in the future? You're amongst friends and family right now. Literally. Yeah, literally.
Actually, our incentive program is not working. And I mean that in the aspect of saying that if you look at it from the monetary side of things, I think we could do away with our incentive program today. It wouldn't change our performance level of our people at all because we've changed that culture to where it's not. They don't care about the check.
Yep.
Kind of stuff. And so from that aspect, maybe it is working. I use this money to do other things with. But that's probably the biggest thing in the other side of what's not working. Probably for us is just the management of time, with the demand of service, the things that are going on, the growth of the community, growth of the organization, the difference in service delivery. How do we manage that time? How do we manage that training effectively for them? And yet keep them as involved as they want to be, but recognize that they have limitations. And so it's a struggle.
We're finding the same thing with the dollar monetary incentive. I did a survey last fall trying to identify different incentives that might match up with their value, right? What they're finding in value. Blue Apron meals, Hello Fresh meals, Top Golf, hunting, fishing trips, technology, whether it's iPads, iPods. I don't even think they make an iPod anymore. You probably tell me. Samsung, whatever, Galaxy, Google. For most of them, they said, we don't need anything. But it was interesting to get their perspective. And so this year we wrote our SAFER grant, which, knock on wood, we're hopefully going to get funded. We're still in the running for. We wrote an incentive program that included $6,100 Visa gift cards every year for 4 years. We wrote incentive programs for Blue Apron or contracted meals. We wrote incentive programs for car washes. That we would be able to buy car wash detailing coupon books, because for the younger members that didn't have a dad or mom that taught them to clean their car, guess what they want to do? They don't want to wash their car. So we wrote these different incentive programs for them. We wrote incentives programs to buy swag. We created an online store for our volunteer fire department with a local distributor, much like Mayhew or Big Sky Fire Apparatus or whoever it might be. We created an online store where they can get online starting on January 1st, and they'll be able to buy swag, cool hats, cool t-shirts. You see the folks with really cool stuff, like Shane Clipness over there, the really cool Great Falls t-shirt or dress shirt on. They have the opportunity to buy that, and they can buy that with cash that we give them for a uniform allowance, or they can buy it with points that we're going to award them. Instead of giving them paper point, that they get 100 points for doing such and such, that they get to go to that online store and they get to buy an iPod or an iPad, or they get to buy a cool hat, or they get to buy the puffy jacket, or they get to buy those things right on the store. So they go right in there, they log in under their own account, which is tied to their email, and if they won a prize or they made so many points, we automatically put it into their account. Those points are then transferable to goods. If it goes over the points they have to pull out their credit card and swipe it for the rest of it. But we tried to create value for them in an online function. We're going to probably, hopefully the vision is if we get the grant, we're going to have some major prizes in there that we're utilizing safer grant dollars for a fly fishing trip, for whitewater rafting, for things that are fun that they can then strive to achieve out of there. Instead of giving them that $4 or $9 a point, that we're putting it into those prizes instead. So that online store was a big piece. The other piece of that online store is it allowed us to manage duty uniforms and t-shirts and all the stuff that you have to give to your volunteers. We could control that now because we could automatically order for them annually their new t-shirt, or every other year their duty boots, or whatever that might have been. So those are some things that we tried to do with incentives, because we identified the dollar amount wasn't working the same. Josh, before we get into the next step, what do you see working for your organization? What do you see working for the future of your organization or the consolidation?
As far as the recruitment piece goes, I think that one-on-one contact, that focused recruitment, I don't think a mass mailing or we're looking for firefighters on our Facebook page is going to work. It's that personal interactions. It's folks you know from church or from the track club or that you see at the lake or things like that. Even just knocking on your neighbor's door. We find that those of you with board of directors, you know how hard it is to recruit board members. I went and knocked on two of my neighbors' doors and got them on our board. So I think it's that one-on-one contact.
I think you're right. It's relationships, right? It's all about the family. And what we do with the family is we try to make it an adoption. We're adopting you into our family. And I might be your stepdad or your stepmom because we're used to broken families nowadays, and we're adopting you. And as I age, I realize the more importance of treating it like that we're adopting you. You're part of our family, whether you want it or not now. And you might not like the conversation some days, but we're going to be honest, we're going to have value with each other, and we're going to have that continual relationship. Fast forward, 2021, I guess we're in now. This last summer, Fire District 2 and Fire District 8, after 2 years of conversation, decided to consolidate. And we consolidated now to 7 stations, 120 members, 1,300 square miles, 32 or 9 apparatus. So now we have this bigger piece. But the one consistent in that bigger piece is family. And as we grow into this new logo and this new identity, there's some things that we wanted to make sure that we adhered to. And that was the respect for the past. We wanted to honor the values of the previous organizations. We didn't want to feel like either of the organizations was giving up and becoming submissive to the other organization. And we didn't want the bigger organization to feel like they dominated the smaller organization. We wanted it to be even Steven all the way across the deal. And because we did that, we had 13 people in the community vote against it out of 200. We had only 1 or 2 members between both organizations resign so far, knock on wood, because the goal was to make sure that we treated it as a bigger family. All we did was get married. And for those of you that have spouses, Janice, you know that there's a give and take with marriage, right? And it all comes back to that family. So when District 8 and District 2 got married, our family just got bigger. We accepted them as brothers and sisters-in-laws. We accepted them as grandparents. We accepted them as nephews and nieces. We just created a bigger family, and we made that the focal point of the consolidation. We didn't care about the money. We didn't care about what color the logos were. We didn't care about any of that stuff when we set out to do this. What we cared about was the people and building our family first. When it came to logos and names, we let them decide. We had contests for it. We gave the power to them so that they owned the consolidation piece. So now we're going to be 7 stations, 120 members, 30 plus apparatus, which creates a whole new problem, right? How do we connect 7 stations and all those people to continue the values and the family vibe? And it takes work, it takes maintenance, it takes communication, it takes messaging. So that's kind of where we're at with our family and the recruitment retention process. Finally, to close out, we got just a couple minutes left. My contact information, my cell number, my email. I'm not real good at answering my cell phone because I'm used to having a cord on it like the 70s, but I try. The success of your organization comes from the energy you put in. The energy you put in comes from the relationships you build. The relationships benefit from your exposure to seeing other ways of doing stuff and learning what fits for you. You cannot duplicate what works in Fire District 2 or Laramie County Fire Authority now. But what you can do is take pieces and puzzles, parts of it, to create your own puzzle. I steal from Rich Calgar, I steal from Brad, I stole a whole heck of a lot from Bill Perrin and Leonard Lumbee and Craig Hansen, because they were doing stuff that worked. We were able to rob parts of those to bend it to fit our needs and our community values. So, 5 minutes left. Any questions? Chirp, chirp. That's usually it means that they fell asleep or it was horrible. So we'll take it as that.
Incentive question.
Yeah.
Giving incentives, gifts, and money and other things can work in some organizations, but I'm curious to see if anyone else has had incentives that were successful within the organization, like additional training. We, because of a SAFER grant, rate everyone based on their numbers of training sessions and responses. Once we get all that data, besides their stipend, I've been using Swiftwater Rescue Training as an opportunity to reward them for their number of responses in the department. And so we've got a number of training programs that are fairly expensive, but we can only give them to a few people. I'm curious to see if anybody else has got that kind of an internal program going on.
You know, we do something similar to that. We use those, we call them salt and pepper, those distractors from normal training. What's the fun stuff to do? The fun stuff is to go do extrication or rope rescue or swiftwater rescue. That's the cool, sexy, fun stuff. But you can't take the time away from the normal training to always do that, and it's expensive. So we use those same things as incentives for our members. We schedule out that we're going to send 12. We put a SAFER grant. Part of the condition is that we pay for time off of work to attend that. So most of those courses or classes are someplace else.
That's a great idea.
And so we schedule on our SAFER grant, it's $25,000 a year that we have set aside in there. What the employer does is the employer documents that time was taken off. We don't want them double dipping, right? That employee signs off that they were gone for this time frame, and this is what they would have earned during that time frame, and we pay that to you could either pay it to the employer or we pay it to the employee to compensate them for that missed time for work. So it seems to work. We don't get a lot of folks using it, but it is an option for us. The other piece of that with the incentive piece is what we're finding is it's not about the incentive if we give them value other places. Like Rich said, the dollar amount isn't working. But those opportunities to do more stuff. One piece of that is we have that stipend or spiff. We treat it as a coefficient. My dad was the math teacher. He'd be very proud of this, and Bill Perrin will appreciate it, because when you add a coefficient, we give more points, more value to the more certifications you get. So it drives them to want to get swift water rescue or want to get rope rescue, because instead of getting 0.8 or 1 percentage point, when they get firefighter 2, they get 1.2, and when they get EMT, they get 1.3, and when they get more value, the more certifications they get. So that drives the desire, in theory, to try to train more. The other thing we do is that quarterly training manual. We did away with Wednesday nights because Wednesday nights don't fit everybody's schedule. And so we had members saying, I work shift work and I can't be there Wednesday night. So, or I have church, or my kid has softball, or whatever that might be. We went to on-shift training where they can come anytime on any day on any station and they can conduct their training. And what they have is they have an outline for the quarter, 3 months, of minimum company standards that they have to have completed. And those are some hands-on, some didactic or internet-based. We have a video attached to it, what the training is supposed to look like. We have a sign-off sheet for it that they completed it, and they can do that at any time. So they finish that minimum company standards each quarter. Some of those are get onto UL and go through this lesson. When you complete the lesson, we have an account with UL. We get to see that they completed it already. Or it's an EMS lesson, they get online, we get the EMS certificate for that hour training or whatever it was. That kind of gave them the flexibility to steer their time, which was really valuable for them, to make it match our needs, which was training for them. So, and that's a work in process. It's not perfect yet. Good question. Any other questions? We are right on time. So thank you for the opportunity. My stuff's up there if you have any questions or if you want to meet me. Josh and I are here all week. Josh is the neighboring chief that's consolidating with us. We're happy to share what's happening and what we're failing at and what we're succeeding at. So please don't hesitate to stop us in between sessions or at dinner tonight. So thank you for having me.